convicted of murdering more people than anyone else in U.S. history.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you got to worry about.
There were red flags all along the way that for some reason nobody paid attention to.
John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise, is a new 6-part docuseries about one of the most notorious serial killers of all time, John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown. Gacy assaulted and murdered 33 young men and boys here in Illinois in the 70s. The bodies of 27 of those victims were found buried in the crawl space of Gacy's home. Gacy was arrested and sentenced to death for those murders. He died by lethal injection in 1994 at the age of 52.
Rod Blackhurst is the executive producer of the series. He joins us live, and if you watch it, you'll see Larry Potash makes an appearance in there. Rod, thanks for being with us.
Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, Larry.
You know, we're so familiar with this story. Growing up in Chicago, it was such a part of our lives. I was so intrigued, though, that there was so much in this series that I hadn't heard before, and I'm sure people outside of Chicago didn't know any of these details. Did you find that?
I think you're right. I didn't grow up in Chicago, and I certainly had a lot to learn. And I think that writ large, what this series does is not only try to update people on what happened in the past, but present a compelling story for why people need to re-examine the way that the narrative was written back in the 70s.
Yeah, you talk about how this story just has gone in all kinds of different directions with potentially more bodies and potentially more suspects. But why weren't these questions asked 25, 30 years ago or more when a lot of these people were still alive?
I think that people at the time just wanted to pass the buck on accountability, or at least that's the way it sounds like to us now making the series, and of course the people who are watching the series and engaging with it. Our hope is, though, that now that these questions are being raised and these things are being presented to people so they can understand them better, that there will be a chance for authorities to do what they need to do. I've always said that it's not a documentarian's job to solve a crime. The onus falls on the people in charge to do that. And if it wasn't done correctly then, well, maybe they can do so now. I
was blown away looking at it through this current lens of ours. How many boys went missing in the 70s and everyone's like, they ran away. Was that just the way things were handled back then? That was so disturbing to me.
Well, certainly we were told that that was just the product of the era, that's the way these things were treated. But one of the things that struck me initially when I was looking at the research that Allison True and Tracy Ullman had done is that these victims had their victimhood taken away. They were reduced to second-class citizens and labeled drug users and or gay men. And I've always said that just because you use drugs recreationally or you're gay doesn't mean you want to be killed. They were defined a certain way, and that narrative has stuck with them for a long time, which is very unfortunate.
Rod, let's pause and take a look at a clip. I believe this is Gacy speaking in an interview from '92.
The clowning was relaxation for me. I enjoyed entertaining kids. Like some people are, they unwind in different ways, either by going out drinking or that. I could put on clown makeup and I was relaxed.
Rod, Gacy had a sketchy past long before he became infamous, and yet he was able to rise politically and go to birthday parties as a clown. How did nobody catch on to this? I know it was pre-computers, but still.
Well, I think what you're talking to is the way that John Wayne Gacy was able to ingratiate himself into political and social circles in Chicago. I mean, he both saw that as a way to grow his business, but also as a way to become friends with people that were in charge and could look the other way when his name came up. One of the things that really fascinated me was that when Gacy was first arrested, Robert Martwick Sr., who was a major political figure in Chicago at the time, and of course Robert Martwick Jr. still is, initially vouched for Gacy as someone of a great reputation who could never have done something like this. He spoke on the record on multiple television interviews, and that just goes to show you the way that people try to get away with things. And of course, it afforded Gacy the opportunity to not be under the spotlight then.
there's always been a lot of discussion how many more victims Gacy might have had, and you spent a lot of time talking about this property at Miami and Elston on the northwest side of the city where his mother used to live. Tom Dart, the sheriff, says that he has scanned that property. Are we thinking there still might be, people there?
Well, everybody that we spoke with for the series, including Larry himself, who reported on the property at Miami Elston extensively, has advocated that there actually be a dig that happens. The sheriff, Tom Dart, has said that they've quote unquote run it out or run out all options or ways to investigate that property. But the experts say if you really want to get to the bottom of things, you have to dig. And there are enough impossible coincidences surrounding that property that you would think that they would want to do that for that to be the case. If there are bodies there, why not find the bodies, and why not know definitively? That would bring closure to other people who think their sons may have been victims of Gacy's. Also, it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah. Rod, you did a good job putting all this together. For more, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise, streaming now on Peacock. Rod, good to talk to you.
Thanks, Rod.
Thank you. Have a great day.